Chapter 1. The Call No Parent Survives. Mason left math class at 2:47 p.m. I know the time because it's printed on the attendance log I later found folded in my pocket, creased and soft like something I'd been carrying for years instead of hours. Period 6. Algebra 2. He hated fractions, loved patterns. He used to say numbers were honest because they never pretended to be anything else. He texted me once after class most days. Heading to the bus. Sometimes a meme. Sometimes just a thumbs up. At 2:49, my phone stayed silent. At 3:11, it rang. The number wasn't Mason's. It wasn't saved. I almost didn't answer. That's the kind of detail that follows you almost. Regrets with sharp edges. Mr. Hale, a woman asked. Her voice was tight, professionally calm in a way people learn when panic is part of the job. This is Vice Principal Reynolds from Northridge High. There's been an incident involving your son. I stood up too fast. The chair behind me tipped over. Someone in the shop laughed, then stopped when they saw my face. What kind of incident? I asked. A pause. Paper shifting. Breath measured. He was assaulted on campus. Paramedics are with him now. They're transporting him to St. Mary's. Is he conscious? Another pause. Longer. Sir, you need to come now. The drive blurred into red lights and white knuckles. I don't remember the turns, just the pressure in my chest, the way my vision narrowed like a tunnel. I called Mason. Straight to voicemail. Again. Hey, buddy, I said into the third one, already hating the sound of my own voice. It's Dad. I'm on my way. Hang in there, okay? Just hang in there. The ER smelled like disinfectant and burned coffee. A television murmured somewhere overhead. The volume too low for words, just noise. A nurse intercepted me before I reached the desk. Logan Hale, she asked. Yes. Where's my son? She didn't answer immediately. She touched my arm. That was the moment I knew. People only touch you like that when the ground is about to give way. He's in trauma 2, she said. The doctor will speak with you as soon as he can. Trauma 2 had glass walls. I saw Mason before I saw anyone else. Tubes. Wires. His face swollen in ways my mind refused to catalog. Purple blooming where there should have been skin. A brace around his neck. His head immobilized like it was something fragile and already broken. A man in green scrubs stepped beside me. Early 40s. Tired eyes. The kind of calm that comes from too much practice at delivering bad news. I'm Dr. Alvarez, he said. Your son was brought in with severe cranial trauma. Multiple fractures to the orbital bone and temporal plate. There's significant cerebral edema. I stared at his mouth. The words sounded foreign, like a language I should know, but didn't. Say that again, I said. In English. He nodded once. Someone struck your son repeatedly in the head. With force. Enough to cause swelling in the brain. We've intubated him to protect his airway. He's in a medically induced coma. Is he going to wake up? Another pause. Doctors paused too. We're doing everything we can, he said. But I need you to understand, this kind of damage doesn't happen by accident. This wasn't kids roughhousing. Someone wanted to hurt him. Badly. The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of the counter to stay upright. How long? I asked. How long was he like that? We don't know exactly. There was a delay before emergency services were called. A delay. I looked through the glass again. At Mason's chest rising and falling in mechanical rhythm, a machine doing the breathing he couldn't. He'd been late for dinner once last month. Missed the bus, walked home, apologized 3 times. I told him it was fine. Told him to text next time. I need to see him, I said. Inside the room, the beeping was relentless. A nurse adjusted a drip. Another checked his pupils with a small light, methodical, detached. Mason didn't flinch. I touched his hand. It was cold. Too cold. Hey, I whispered. I'm here. Nothing. Dad. He'd called that morning, halfway down the stairs. You forgot your coffee. I pressed my forehead to his knuckles and felt something inside me fracture along with him. A uniformed officer appeared in the doorway. Middle-aged. Badge polished. Clipboard tucked under his arm like a shield. Mr. Hale, he said. I'm Officer Brenner. I just need to ask you a few questions. Not now, I said without looking up. It'll only take a minute. I straightened slowly. Where was my son found? Behind a science wing, he said. Near the dumpsters. My jaw tightened. Any witnesses? None who saw anything clearly, he said. We're classifying it as a fight between students until we know more. I laughed. The sound surprised both of us. A fight, I repeated, gesturing to Mason's unmoving body. Does that look like a fight to you? Brenner's eyes flicked to the machines, then away. Kids these days, things get out of hand. Out of hand, I said. You should write that down. Real poetic. He shifted his weight. We'll be in touch. He left before I could say something I wouldn't take back. Or maybe he left because he knew exactly what I was going to say. When the room finally cleared, when it was just the machines and my son and the sound of blood moving too loudly in my ears, I sat down. I watched the ventilator rise and fall, counted the seconds between beeps, cataloged details the way I always did when chaos tried to take over. Anchor points. Patterns. This wasn't random. The injuries were too focused. The delay too convenient. The words dumpsters and no witnesses sat wrong in my head. I closed my eyes. Something inside me gave way. Not loudly, not all at once. Just a quiet, controlled collapse. The part of me that believed in after-school safety. In adults stepping in systems doing what they were supposed to do. I leaned closer to Mason and whispered, I've got you. And in that moment, watching a machine breathe for my son, I understood the truth with a clarity that cut through the pain. This wasn't a fight. It was a message. The father broke. The instructor woke. Chapter 2, a system that shrugs. They call me at 8.12 the next morning. Not to ask how Mason was doing. Not to offer help. Not even to apologize. Mr. Hale, this is Vice Principal Reynolds. We need you to come in today to discuss yesterday's incident. Incident. I looked at the ICU monitor before answering. Mason's vitals flickered in green and yellow, numbers rising and falling like they were undecided about keeping him. I'm at the hospital, I said. My son is in a coma. Yes, she replied unfazed. This is about that. North Ridge High looked exactly the same as it always had. Brick walls, banners about integrity and community, students laughing in clusters like nothing in the world had changed. I parked in the visitor spot and sat there for a full minute, hands on the steering wheel, watching kids stream past the doors my son never walked out of. The conference room smelled like lemon cleaner and stale air. Reynolds sat at the head of the table, hands folded. Next to her was the school counselor, a man with soft eyes and a legal pad already filled out. Across from them sat a uniformed school resource officer, his chair angled just enough to feel unofficial. We're very sorry about what happened, Reynolds began. But after reviewing preliminary reports, it appears this was a mutual altercation between students. I waited, let the silence stretch. A mutual altercation, I said slowly. My son was found unconscious behind dumpsters with multiple skull fractures. The counselor cleared his throat. Teenage conflicts can escalate unexpectedly. How many of them were there? I asked. Reynolds glanced at the officer. We're still determining that. You know exactly how many, I said. You just don't want to say it. The officer shifted. No weapons were involved, Mr. Hale. Neither are fists supposed to be used to crush a kid's head, I said. But here we are. Reynolds slid a paper across the table. An incident report. Sanitized. Bloodless. Words like scuffle and disagreement, and both parties sustained injuries. Both parties? I asked. Yes, she said. Other students reported minor injuries. I leaned back in my chair. Let me ask you something. If my son had done this to someone else, if he'd put another student in a coma, what would you call it? No one answered. Suspension? I continued. Expulsion? Police charges? The counselor spoke gently. We want to avoid assigning blame before all facts are known. Funny, I said. You seem real comfortable assigning it to my kid. I stood. Show me the footage. Reynolds frowned. Unfortunately, the cameras covering that area were not operational at the time. Not operational, I repeated. Let me guess, maintenance? Yes, she said quickly. An upgrade. When did they go down? Earlier that week. Documented. Another glance. Another pause. And witnesses? I asked. The officer tapped his pen. Students reported hearing a commotion, but didn't see anything clearly. Behind a school in daylight, I said. With dozens of kids around. They were frightened, Reynolds said. Kids don't like to get involved. I nodded. I trained men to spot patterns under fire. This wasn't fear. This was choreography. Who were the other students? I asked. Reynolds' smile tightened. We can't disclose names due to privacy laws. Then I will, I said, already standing. Because this isn't over. The police station was quieter than I expected. Fluorescent lights. A flag in the corner. A manila folder slid across a desk by a detective who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. We're treating this as a school matter for now, he said. I didn't come here to hear how you're treating it, I replied. I came to see how you're investigating it. He sighed. There's no evidence of premeditation. You didn't look, I said. We have statements. From who? Students. Staff. Anyone who actually intervened? He didn't answer. I leaned forward. My son was beaten long enough to cause brain swelling. That takes time. Where were the teachers? Class transitions, he said. Hard to monitor every area. Then why was he behind dumpsters? I asked. Why not the hallway? The courtyard. The detective closed the folder. Mr. Hale, I understand you're emotional. I smiled. It wasn't friendly. Emotion has nothing to do with this, I said. Competence does. I walked out before he could respond. It was a nurse who finally told me the name. His friends have been hanging around, she said quietly while checking Mason's for. The kids who did this. They keep asking if he's awake. My hands clenched. Names? She hesitated, then leaned closer. Hunter Caldwell. That's the one they listened to. I recognized the name before I understood why. It clicked when I got back to my truck and opened my phone. Caldwell, Richard, City Council. Campaign photos. Fundraisers. Smiling handshakes with police chiefs and school board members. A man who talked about youth programs and second chances. I drove back to the school without thinking. Found Reynolds in the hallway. Hunter Caldwell, I said. Her eyes flickered. Just for a second. We can't discuss individual students. That's his father, isn't it? I pressed. Richard Caldwell. She straightened. This has nothing to do with politics. Everything does, I said, especially when you're lying this badly. Her voice cooled. Be careful, Mr. Hale. There it was. Not concern, not sympathy, a warning. By the time I returned to the hospital, the shape of it was clear. The language, the delays, the broken cameras, the mutual altercation script repeated like a chant. They weren't protecting kids. They were protecting themselves. I stood at Mason's bedside again, watched the machines do what he couldn't, and felt the last pieces fall into place. The school would minimize. The police would stall. The city would close ranks. They would bury my son under paperwork and phrases and procedure. Because that's what systems do when power is threatened. The message became clear. The system would bury Mason to protect itself. Chapter 3, The Mockery. I waited until lunch. Not because I wanted witnesses, because I wanted context. Predators behave differently when they think they're safe. Schools are ecosystems. You learn where the power sits by watching who moves without fear. Northridge's quad was loud with the careless noise of kids who'd never seen consequences. Music from phone speaker. Fries spilling onto concrete. Laughter sharp enough to cut. I scanned faces, posture, gravity wells. Who others oriented around. Who took up space without asking. Hunter Caldwell sat on the low brick wall by the flagpole like it belonged to him. Tall, broad-shouldered, expensive sneakers he didn't worry about scuffing. 4 boys flanked him, one pacing, one leaning in too close, one constantly checking his phone, one with that hollow-eyed grin that comes from never being told no. They were watching a video. I knew before I was close enough to hear it. Hey, Hunter said, looking up as I approached. His smile widened when recognition hit. Yo guys, check it out. Phones lifted. Cameras turned. I stopped 3 feet from him. Close enough that he could see the lines in my face. Close enough that I could smell cologne and grease and youth. Where'd my son's phone? I asked. The question cut through the laughter for half a second. Not long enough to matter. Hunter snorted. Which one's your son? The boys laughed again, louder now. Performative. Mason Hale, I said. Oh, Hunter said, dragging it out. Dumpsters, right? The word landed like a stone dropped into water. Ripples of laughter. I felt it then, the urge. The old, Clean line between problem and solution. How easy it would be to end this in under 5 seconds. How many ways there were to make him understand pain. I didn't move. Listen, Hunter continued, rocking back on his palms. I'm really sorry your kid can't take a hit. You recorded it, I said. He tilted his head. Recorded what? The beating, I said. You filmed it. You streamed it. One of the boys, thin, nervous, glanced away. Hunter smiled wider. Prove it. I looked past him at the others. Which one of you called it in? A teacher stood 10 yards away, pretending to supervise. She watched us, eyes darting, then turned her back. Hunter followed my gaze and laughed. Relax. This is school. You don't get to come in here and threaten students. I'm not threatening anyone, I said. I'm asking questions. He slid off the wall and stood. He was taller than me by a couple inches. He leaned in so the cameras caught it. You should be careful, he said softly. Accidents happen. Is that what you call it? I asked. An accident? He shrugged. Kids fight. Sometimes they lose. 5-on-1, I said. Behind dumpsters. One of the boys raised his phone higher. Say it louder, man. My followers love this stuff. Hunter chuckled. Yeah, scream louder. The words punched the air between us. Familiar. Too familiar. I saw it then, not memory, not imagination, but pattern. The way he enjoyed the audience. The way the others fed off him. The confidence that came from knowing someone else cleaned up after them. This wasn't teenage bravado. This was practiced. You think you're untouchable, I said. Hunter leaned back, hands up. I think you should leave before you embarrass yourself. Already happened, another boy said. They laughed again. Someone clapped. I felt eyes on us now. Students slowing, circling. Phones up. Teachers not moving. Where were the adults? I asked, raising my voice just enough. When my son was on the ground? Hunter glanced around theatrically. Probably busy teaching math. More laughter. I nodded once. Decision made. Listen to me, I said, meeting Hunter's eyes. What you did doesn't go away. Not for you. Not for them. His smile faltered for the first time. Just a flicker. Then he masked it. You don't know who you're talking to. I do, I said. That's the problem. A security guard finally approached, slow and unsure. Sir, you need to step off campus. I looked at him. You're late. Hunter waved. Bye, Mr. Hale. Hope your kid wakes up. That did it. My hand twitched. My body leaned forward before my mind caught up. The guard stiffened. Phones tilted, hungry. I stopped myself. Hunter saw it. His eyes lit up. Yeah, he said quietly. That's what I thought. I turned and walked away. Each step measured. Controlled. The laughter followed me like thrown stones. In the parking lot, my phone buzzed. A notification from an unknown account. A video. Me. Hunter. The quad. His words captioned with laughing emojis. Dumpster's dad. I sat in my truck and watched it once. Then again, without sound. Studied faces. Noted who filmed. Who smiled. Who watched without intervening. Predators don't fear consequences. They fear disruption. And this system had trained them well. That night, the hospital lights hummed low and steady. Mason's condition hadn't changed. The nurse spoke in careful tones. The doctor avoided absolutes. I sat alone in the waiting room after visiting hours ended, the weight of the day settling into my bones. My phone rested heavy in my hand. I scrolled past old contacts, old lives, names that hadn't been spoken in years but never really left. I stopped on one. No name, just a number. I stepped outside into the cold and dialed. It rang once. Logan, a voice said. No surprise, no greeting, just certainty. I need a favor, I said. A pause. Then, how bad? I looked back through the glass at the ICU. And my son, motionless, breathing through plastic and wire. Bad, I said. Another pause. Longer this time. Send the word, the voice said. Well, listen. I ended the call and stood there in the dark, the laughter from earlier still echoing faintly in my ears. Mercy had been offered. It had been mocked. And that was the moment it ended. Chapter 4, The Instructors Network. They didn't arrive together. That was the first sign they were still who I remembered. One came in before dawn, blending into the hospital parking garage like a shadow that belonged there. Another checked into a motel 2 exits down under a name that wasn't his. A third never showed his face at all, just a text that said in position and a location pin that told me he'd already mapped the town better than the city ever had. No hugs, no speeches, just nods. I met them in the quiet corner of the cafeteria after visiting hours, the place where night shift nurses drank burnt coffee and stared at nothing. Mason slept behind glass a floor above us, machines humming like a metronome that refused to speed up. "Logan," said Cole, sliding into the chair across from me. He looked older. We all did. The kind of older that doesn't show in mirrors but lives in the eyes. "You came fast," I said. "You called," he replied. "That's usually enough." The others filtered in, Evan, broad and calm, the kind of man who could stand in a storm and not feel rushed. Reyes, thinner now, eyes always moving. And Brooks, who said nothing and observed everything like he was still counting exits. No one asked what happened. They'd already figured it out. I pushed my phone across the table and played the video. The one from the quad. Laughter. Mockery. Hunter's face, smug and unafraid. Cole watched it once. Evan watched it twice. Brooks didn't look at the screen at all. He watched my hands. "Kids protected," Evan said finally. "Yes," I replied. "By the school. The police. And his father." Reyes nodded. "Which means he's sloppy. Which means there's more footage," Brooks added quietly. I looked up. The cameras were down. "They always are," Brooks said. "The backups aren't." They went to work without another word. Not hacking. Not smashing. Just patience. Old favors. Forgotten access points. Systems no one bothered to lock because no one believed anyone would try. I stayed with Mason while they did it. Read him the same stupid news articles he used to complain about. Told him about the weather. About the cafeteria coffee. At 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. Found it. I stepped into the stairwell and answered. It was streamed, Brooks said. Private group. Auto-delete set for 24 hours. But, I asked. But kids are idiots, Reyes chimed in. They saved trophies. They sent the files one by one. Mason walking alone. A shadow stepping into frame. Then more. The shove. The first punch. Laughter bleeding into the audio. Someone shouting encouragement. Someone shouting scream louder. I didn't watch the whole thing. I didn't need to. This wasn't spontaneous, Evans said. They waited for him. They herded him, Cole added. Blocked exits. Classic funnel. And they celebrated after, Reyes said. Group chat lit up like a stadium. Screenshots followed. Jokes. Emojis. Bets on whether Mason would wake up. I closed my eyes. Anything else? I asked. There was a pause. Yes, Brooks said. A name. He sent a badge number. A photo pulled from a department website. Sergeant Mark Daly. He scrubbed the timestamps. Brooks continued. Accessed the school system remotely. Same night. Took payment 2 days earlier. Payment? I asked. Shell account. Evans said. Small amounts. Frequent. Enough to keep mouth shut. I leaned against the concrete wall of the stairwell, the cold seeping through my jacket. He coached them, Reyes said. Told them what to say, what words to use. Mutual altercation came straight from his message. The phrase echoed in my head, the way it had been repeated. Calm, reassuring, empty. Daly's been doing this a while, Cole said. Same pattern. Kids with the right last names. Incidents that go nowhere. And if we go to internal affairs? I asked. Brooks exhaled slowly. Daly's brother-in-law runs it. Silence settled between us, heavy and complete. I thought of the detective's shrug, the vice principal's smile, the warning in her eyes. How exposed are we? I asked. Not at all, Evans said. They think you're just a dad yelling into the wind. I looked through the stairwell window at the city lights, the school, the police station, the neat little grid of a place that believed itself orderly. We don't move through channels, I said. We don't file complaints. We don't ask. Cole watched me carefully. You're sure? I turned back to them. Local justice is compromised. No one argued. Then we go quiet, Brooks said. Off grid. I nodded once. This isn't about revenge, I added. It's about removing protection. Reyes smiled thinly. That's usually worse. I went back upstairs and sat beside Mason again. The machines did their work. The numbers held steady, indifferent to plans and names and guilt. I took his hand. They think this disappears, I said softly. They think time and silence fix everything. The hallway lights dimmed as night shifted toward morning. Somewhere below, men who still trusted me waited for orders. I stayed where I was. Local justice was compromised. This became an off-grid operation. Chapter 5, Fear, applied precisely. They called it getaway. That's what the caption said on the photo. Brooks pulled up, lake water like polished glass, a dock strung with lights, music speakers stacked like offerings, smiling faces, red cups raised. Someone had added a sticker. Heard he's still asleep, face with tears of joy. I didn't ask who posted it. I didn't need to. They're celebrating, Reyes said flat. Words out he might not wake up. I looked at the image longer than necessary, letting the details burn in. The lake house sat an hour north, tucked into trees dense enough to swallow sound. Rental, paid for through a parent's account that would never be traced unless someone wanted it to be. They think they're safe, Evans said. No cameras, no neighbors. Perfect, I replied. We didn't rush. Fear, when applied precisely, requires timing. Night fell clean and cold. The lake went dark except for the house lights and the thump of bass rolling across water. Laughter carried farther than they realized. Confidence always makes noise. We parked a mile out and walked in. No flashlights, no chatter, just boots on pine needles and the soft click of equipment being checked by hands that had done this before and would do it again. Brooks tapped his watch once. Power went out. The music died mid-beat. Lights snapped off. The lake swallowed the sound like it had been waiting. A beat of confusion. Then phones lit up. Reyes lifted a device no bigger than a deck of cards and thumbed it on. The phones went dark too. What the hell? Someone shouted. Did you pay the bill? Another voice laughed, uncertain. We fanned out the way shadows do, naturally, without effort. Evan took the dock. Cole moved to the side yard. Brooks disappeared entirely, already inside systems that thought they were private. I stepped onto the porch. The door was open. Warm air spilled out, thick with alcohol and cologne and the smell of youth that thought itself immortal. A dozen faces turned toward me at once. Hunter stood near the kitchen island, red cup in hand, smile already forming, until it didn't. Hey, he said, it's you. No one laughed this time. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. Silence had weight. Party's over, I said. Someone reached for the door behind me. Evan's presence stopped them without a word. The dock creaked under his weight, a reminder of gravity. Who are you? A girl asked, her voice thin. Hunter scoffed. Relax. He can't do anything. I took a step forward. Just one. Phones are dead, I said calmly. Power's cut. You're isolated. A murmur rippled through the room. Someone cursed. Someone else tried their phone again, like repetition might change reality. Hunter's jaw tightened. This is illegal. Is it? I asked, because you seem pretty comfortable filming illegal things. A boy near the couch, same one from the quad, went pale. You don't get to come in here and threaten us, Hunter said, louder now. Performative. My dad, I know who your father is, I said. He knows where you are too. Or he did. That landed. I let my eyes move, slow and deliberate, from face to face. Let them see themselves reflected in someone who wasn't impressed. You recorded my son, I continued. You streamed it. You laughed. No one made you watch, Hunter snapped. I didn't, I said. I studied. Reyes' voice came from somewhere behind them. Group chat's still syncing. That's cute. A phone chimed weakly, then died again. What do you want? Someone whispered. Not what, I said. Who? I looked at Hunter, held his gaze. Let the room feel the focus narrow. You think protection makes you powerful, I said. It doesn't. It makes you loud. He swallowed. Just once. Brooks' voice crackled softly in my ear. We're in. I nodded, barely perceptible. On the big screen, mounted over the fireplace, the image changed. Party photos vanished, replaced by bank statements. Names. Dates. Transfers. What is that? Hunter demanded. Your allowance. Brooks replied from nowhere. Your friend's hush money. Your sergeant's cut. A new screen. Messages. Photos. Blackmail folders labeled with last names and graduation years. A girl gasped and covered her mouth. You saved everything, I said. You thought it was leverage. Hunter's bravado cracked. You can't use that. I don't need to, I said. I just need you to know it exists. Someone bolted for the back door. Cole stepped into view, blocking it effortlessly. No violence, I said, without turning. No running. The room stilled. I leaned in just enough that Hunter could hear me without the others catching every word. You're not untouchable, I said softly. You were just buffered. His eyes flicked around the room, searching for someone to save him. No one moved. I straightened, addressed them all. Tonight, you learned something, I said. Fear isn't screaming. It's understanding. The screens went black. The power stayed off. We left the way we came, quiet, unhurried, precise. No threats shouted, no blows thrown, just the absence of safety where it used to live. Back in the trees, Reyes exhaled. Clean. Evan nodded. They'll be looking over their shoulders for years. I didn't look back at the house. Fear had been applied. Precisely. Chapter 6, Breaking the Pack. You don't break a pack by charging the strongest. You break it by removing the one that's already limping. I knew who it was before Brooks said the name. I'd seen him at the quad. The way his eyes never settled. The way he laughed a beat too late, like he was checking for approval before committing. Eli Mercer, 16. Decent grades. No record. A follower who'd mistaken proximity to power for protection. He's the hinge, Brooks said, tapping the screen. Everything swings on him. Where? I asked. Works nights at a gas station off Route 9, Evan replied. Closes alone. I didn't like that detail. Not because it was dangerous, because it was unnecessary. Fear doesn't need darkness to work. It needs inevitability. Not there, I said. We don't spook him in public. Reyes nodded. Already ahead of you. He jogs. Same loop. Same time. Predictable. We waited 2 days. In the hospital, Mason's numbers dipped and climbed like a cruel joke. The swelling hadn't gone down. The neurosurgeon spoke in careful phrases that left room for miracles but prepared you for funerals. Pressure's increasing, she said. We're adjusting medication. How much time? I asked. She didn't answer directly. We're watching closely. The clock got louder. On the third evening, Eli took his usual turn past the old baseball field. The lights there never worked right. Half on, half dead. A place built for nostalgia. Now, just shadows and chain link. I stepped into his path. He froze so hard he nearly fell. Please, he blurted. I didn't do anything. I held up a hand. I know. That confused him more than anger would have. You were there, I continued. That matters. He backed away until the fence pressed into his spine. Hunter said, I'm not here for Hunter, I said. I'm here for you. Evan emerged from the shadows, calm and unthreatening. Reyes followed, hands visible, empty, no violence, only presence. We're just talking, Evan said. Eli's breath came fast. I can't. My parents know you're jogging, I said. Know you're a good kid. He flinched at that. I stepped closer, keeping my voice low. Good kids don't stand around while someone gets destroyed. Tears welled fast, unguarded. I didn't hit him, he said. I swear. I know, I said again. You filmed. He shook his head. I deleted it. No, Brooks said from behind him. You didn't. Eli sagged. We didn't touch him. Didn't need to. The truth has weight all on its own. Sit, Evan said gently, gesturing to the bleachers. Eli Saturday, tell us why you stayed, I said. He stared at his hands. Because if I didn't, I'd be next. I let that hang there. Then, who planned it? Silence. Eli, I said. My son is in a coma. That did it. Words spilled out in broken pieces. The group chat, the waiting, the jokes before it even happened. The way Hunter liked to test how far he could go. I tried to stop it, Eli said weakly. I said it was too much. And I asked. They laughed. We listened. Didn't interrupt. Let the truth build momentum. When he finished, Reyes handed him a pen and paper. Write it, Reyes said. All of it. Eli hesitated. They'll kill me. No, I said. They'll abandon you. He wrote for an hour. Hands shaking. Ink smearing where tears fell. Names. Times. Words used. Who stood where? Who kicked? Who filmed? When he finished, he slid the pages toward me like an offering. I'm sorry, he whispered. I believed him. Go home. I said. Don't answer calls. He looked up, stunned. That's it. For you? I said. Yes. He ran. I drove back to the hospital alone, the confession folded in my jacket. The night felt heavier than usual, like it knew what it carried. At the ICU desk, a nurse looked up. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Mr. Hale, she said, the doctor needs to speak with you. My stomach dropped. Mason's room felt smaller, crowded with machines and quiet urgency. The neurosurgeon stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed. The swelling has increased, she said. We're seeing pressure spikes. What does that mean? I asked. It means we may need to intervene surgically, she replied. And even then, just say it, I said. There's a risk he won't recover, she said softly. I nodded. Once. I stepped to Mason's side and took his hand. It felt warmer now. Feverish. I brought you something, I said quietly, pulling out the folded pages. I didn't read them again. I didn't need to. I just held them there, tangible proof that the world outside his room was moving, even if he couldn't. The nurse adjusted a monitor. The numbers dipped. Mason, I whispered. Stay with me. The confession sat heavy in my palm. The clock kept ticking. Mason's condition worsened, keeping the clock brutally real. Chapter 7, The Blackmail. I didn't plan to see her that night. I told myself I was too tired, too focused, that there were bigger fires burning than old wounds. But vulnerability is a crack, and cracks get exploited. Brooks had said it plainly, without judgment. You've got a blind spot. So I drove. Karen lived 15 minutes from the hospital in a townhouse that looked like every other one on the block. Neutral paint, tidy lawn, porch light always on. Safe. Controlled. The kind of place you choose when you want the world to believe nothing bad happens inside. She answered the door on the second knock. Her face changed when she saw me. Not surprise. Recognition. The look of someone who's been waiting for a reckoning. Is Mason, she started. Alive, I said. For now. She nodded and stepped aside. Come in. The living room smelled like lavender cleaner and old paper. Framed photos lined the mantel. Mason at 8, missing teeth and grinning. Mason at 12, holding a fish too big for his arms. Me cropped out of most of them. Deliberately. She wrung her hands. I didn't know you were coming. I know, I said. That's why I did. We stood there for a moment, the space between us filled with everything we never said when it mattered. Sit, she said finally. I didn't. Why didn't you call me? I asked. When this happened. Her eyes dropped. I was told not to. Told by who? She hesitated, then crossed to the window and pulled the curtain aside like she needed air. It started with a message, she said. An email. I waited. They said they had something, she continued. Photos. From years ago. Private. I felt the room tighten. From when? After the divorce, she said quietly. I was lonely. Stupid. They threatened you, I said. Yes. Boo. She turned back to me, eyes wet but steady. A man who said he worked with the police. He knew Mason's schedule, knew my job. He said if I made noise, if I talked to reporters or lawyers, those photos would go public. I clenched my jaw. Did he name himself? She shook her head. But he mentioned the Caldwells. Said this would all go away if I stayed quiet. How long? I asked. Since the night Mason was hurt, she said. They told me it was a fight. That boys would be boys. That if I didn't complicate things, Mason would get the help he needed. And you believe them. I was scared, she said, tears spilling now. I thought I was protecting him. I exhaled slowly. Anger flared, then cooled. Fear makes people do terrible math. Show me, I said. She retrieved her laptop with shaking hands. Pulled up the email chain. Burner accounts. Time-stamped threats. A link to a cloud folder she hadn't clicked in years. Brooks' voice came through my earpiece as soon as I forwarded it. That's Daly's handiwork, he said. Same structure. Same mistakes. Can you kill it? I asked. Already am. Karen watched my face, searching for judgment. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know, I said, and I meant it. The screen flickered. The folder link died. The emails grayed out, replaced by error messages. That's it, she asked. No, I said. That's the beginning. I stepped outside and made 2 calls. Short. Precise. By morning, the blackmail source didn't exist anymore. Accounts frozen. Devices wiped. backups exposed and mirrored in a places Daly couldn't reach without burning himself. Every copy of those photos was either secured or made radioactive. Touching them now would leave fingerprints no one could scrub. Karen stared at her laptop, stunned. They can't hurt me anymore. No, I said. They can't hurt anyone with that. She sank onto the couch, relief collapsing into sobs. I let her have it. Grief needs space. When she finally looked up, she asked the question I've been waiting for. What happens now? Now, I said, there's no leverage left. Back at the hospital, Mason's room hummed with the same relentless rhythm. I stood by the window and watched dawn bleed into the sky, pale and unforgiving. Brooks texted an update. Federal packet ready. I read through it once. Twice. Everything cross-verified. Chain of custody airtight. No speculation. No emotion. Just truth, documented and undeniable. I sent it through channels that didn't ask questions and didn't answer phones. Then I sat beside my son and held his hand, feeling the fragile warmth of him, the weight of what was still at risk. Karen called once. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry, because some bridges need quiet before they're crossed again. Outside the room, men I trusted moved pieces into place with surgical care. Inside, I whispered to Mason about the time he beat me at chess and wouldn't stop gloating. You can't checkmate me forever, I told him. The last internal vulnerability had been sealed. The silence bought with fear was gone. The enemy had nothing left to threaten, nothing left to hide behind. Federal channels were quietly activated with airtight evidence. Chapter 8, The Collapse. The councilman's house sat on a hill that looked down on the city like it had something to judge. Brick and glass. Gates that didn't really keep anyone out, just reminded them they weren't invited. 2 security cameras pointed at the driveway, both installed for show. Brooks had looped them an hour ago. Inside, the mood was tense enough to taste. Richard Caldwell stood at the head of his dining table, jacket off, sleeves rolled up like he was about to negotiate instead of unravel. Around him sat the familiar faces of a protected ecosystem. A deputy police chief, 2 city officials, a campaign treasurer, and Sergeant Daly, sweating through his collar despite the air conditioning. This is being blown out of proportion, Caldwell said, palms flat on the table. Kids fight. The media will move on. Daly shifted in his chair. Sir, with respect, this isn't just media anymore. Caldwell shot him a look. Then control it. Daly opened his mouth, and every phone on the table buzzed at once. Not a call, not a text, a notification. The television, mounted on the far wall, flickered on by itself. The sound came up mid-sentence. Confirmed sources indicate a coordinated cover-up involving North Ridge High School. The city council. What the hell is this? One of the officials barked. The screen split. Documents scrolled. Bank records. Screenshots. Body cam timestamps aligned with deleted logs. Faces blurred only enough to meet legal thresholds. Caldwell's face drained of color. Across town, in a cramped newsroom, a producer leaned toward a reporter and whispered, "It's all verified." Federal confirmation just came in. On another screen, a press release dropped from an address that didn't usually speak unless it was ready to end something. Back at the house, Daly's phone rang again. This time it was a call. He answered with shaking fingers. Yes, he didn't get a finish. 2 unmarked vehicles rolled up the driveway. Doors opened in perfect sequence. Jackets with letters no one argued with came into view. The deputy chief stood abruptly. This is a mistake. Sit down, a voice said from the doorway. Calm. Final. Handcuffs came out. In a span of 5 minutes, power that had taken decades to build folded in on itself like wet paper. Careers ended mid-sentence. Reputations evaporated under studio lights. Names trended. Statements were drafted and abandoned. At North Ridge High, administrators were escorted from their offices while students filmed through lockers and door frames. At the police station, desks were cleared, badges placed gently but permanently on metal. Money froze. Accounts locked. Foundations dissolved. There would be hearings, trials, sentencing phases. But the collapse was already complete. I watched none of it live. I was in a hospital corridor that smelled like antiseptic and fear, pacing a strip of tile, so worn it told me how many other people had walked it before me hoping for mercy. A surgeon approached, mask hanging loose around his neck. His eyes told me the answer before his mouth did. The pressure spiked, he said. We're taking him in now. How long? I asked. Hours, he replied. If we're lucky. They moved fast. Mason's bed rolling past me, machines rattling, his face pale beneath the lights. I walked with them until double doors closed and locked me out. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass. Inside, hands I trusted worked with precision and urgency. Outside, my phone buzzed endlessly in my pocket, updates, confirmations, the sound of a system collapsing in real time. I didn't look. I sat down, counted breaths, remembered Mason at 6, insisting he could swim across the lake without help. Remembered pulling him out halfway, both of us laughing and coughing. A nurse sat beside me, didn't speak, just stayed. Somewhere, cameras flashed as arrests were announced. Somewhere else, a councilman's house was taped off and stripped of illusion. None of it mattered here. The doors finally opened hours later. The surgeon stepped out, exhaustion carved deep into his face. He coded once, he said. We got him back. My legs nearly gave out. We stabilized him. The surgeon continued. But it was close. I nodded, unable to speak. Behind me, on a muted television mounted high in the corner, a headline scrolled past. City leadership in custody amid explosive corruption probe. I didn't turn around. All the power in the city had just collapsed. During surgery, Mason nearly dies. Chapter 9. The One Who Ran. Hunter Caldwell didn't wait. By the time the arrest began, he was gone. Not a trace at the councilman's estate. No familiar car in the driveway. Nothing on security cams thanks to the loops Brooks had planted. Just a whisper. He ran. I felt at the moment I heard. Predictable. Arrogant. Infuriating. But expected. He always runs first. Brooks said over the encrypted line. Always a chance we lose him in the city grid. Then we take the grid out of it, I replied. The trail led north, into the thick forested ridges that bordered the state line. Cell service dropped off halfway up. GPS flickered in and out, and the wind carried the scent of pine and wet earth. Perfect. Reyes mapped the area. Evan coordinated surveillance. Cole and Brooks provided overwatch from ridges I couldn't see. I moved alone on the trail, boots silent, eyes scanning. Every broken branch, every faint footprint told me exactly how he moved. Hunter's cabin came into view just before dusk. Old logs, smoke curling from a chimney that smelled like pine and mildew. A single light in the window blinked lazily. He thought himself hidden. Thought he had time. I stayed in the tree-line, watching. Phone's dead, cameras irrelevant. Just Hunter and the hunters prey me. I didn't rush. I didn't signal. I let the wind carry my approach. Predators of his type always underestimate patience. Inside the cabin, Hunter was pacing. He didn't hear me at first, and that was good. He was talking to himself, or maybe rehearsing what he'd say if cornered. Shit, they can't know. They can't. He stopped, hands on the counter, breathing hard. Eyes darted to the window, to the door. He imagined walls, imagined cameras, imagined protection that no longer existed. I tapped the glass lightly. The sound carried. Hunter spun pale. Who's there? Someone you should have remembered, I said. Calm. Controlled. He laughed nervously. Dad? No, can't be. Not your father, I said. But I'm what comes after your father's protection fails. He backed toward the corner. The table between us, bottles and glasses shaking. You can't, they'll. I don't care about them, I interrupted. I care about this. I gestured toward his chest. This is what matters now. You. He swallowed. His arrogance faltered. First small, then visibly. You think you're untouchable, I said, slowly walking forward. Step by step. You spent your whole life being buffered, protected, laughed at, watched over, and you believed it was permanent. He stumbled backward. I didn't do. You did enough, I said. Enough for fear to live inside you forever. And it's already begun. His knees hit the wall. The phone buzzed once, ignored. Every plan he'd had to escape collapsed under one simple truth. The wilderness has no favors. The hunted listens first, thinks second, runs last. I stopped a few feet from him, not touching him, not raising a fist, just presence. Look around, I said. No cameras, no friends, no family, just you and me and the sound of your mistakes. He trembled, face pale, sweat running down his temple. You won't, I won't, I said, because it doesn't need to end with blood. It ends with understanding. He sank to the floor. A brief shudder ran through him, and then he spoke. I can fix it. I can tell. You don't get to fix it, I said. You only get to live with it. Hours passed. Darkness thickened. The forest breathed around the cabin. Every snap of a twig outside reminded him that he was not alone, that the world had shifted, and his usual predators, money, influence, fear, no longer mattered. You'll always be watching, he whispered. Yes, I said, because someone has to, because now you understand. I'll let silence fill the space. Let stretch and coil around him. Let him see every choice he had made, every face he had ignored, every life he had endangered. The psychological collapse was deliberate, surgical. Finally, he slumped fully, face buried in his hands. The pride drained, the arrogance gone, the smirk replaced with the raw, hollow weight of someone who realized his protection had been illusion, his power borrowed, his safety rented, and now it was overdue. I surrender, he muttered, voice barely audible. I didn't move, didn't need to. I let him recognize the chains of his own mind first. I'll tell everything, every name, every detail, he stammered. That's the start, I said, not the end. He shivered, then nodded. Trembling, broken, the type of fear that doesn't leave after lights turn on, that lingers in hallways, in shadows, in quiet moments where you thought yourself safe. The first step was acknowledgement. Then he curled into himself, fully aware of the weight of being watched, not by men in suits, not by cameras, but by someone who had learned how to anticipate every lie, every move, every excuse. The wilderness around the cabin held us in suspended judgment. The lake shimmered faintly, the trees whispered in wind, and the world beyond had already begun to collapse because of the dominoes I had set in motion. Hunter's face, pale and drawn, turned to me. You're not going to? Not tonight, I said. I don't need to. You've already felt worse than anything I could give you, and this will stay with you. He shivered again, whispered, I understand. Yes, I said, and you'll remember. Every day, I left him there, curled on the cabin floor, eyes wide, stomach tight, chest rising with the rhythm of someone who knows fear isn't temporary. The snow of panic may melt in the sun, but the shadow it casts is permanent. Outside, the team gathered silently in the trees. No words, no congratulatory chatter, just presence, just timing. We moved back toward the ridge, leaving Hunter alone with the weight he had earned. No sirens, no handcuffs, no bullets, only the understanding that life had rules, and some lessons could only be taught by watching the predator become the prey. Hunter surrendered, fully broken, knowing fear is permanent. Chapter 10, The Quiet After. The morning sunlight slanted through the ICU blinds like it had been waiting all night for permission to enter. I didn't notice it at first. My eyes were fixed on Mason, pale but breathing steadily. The rhythm of the machines a steady reassurance that he was still here, that he had survived the worst of what the world had thrown at him. The phones had stopped buzzing hours ago. The news reports slowed to analysis and recaps. Arrests had been made, statements read, confessions submitted. The city's power brokers were either behind bars, under investigation, or vanished. Politicians, financiers, even Sergeant Daly, their lives exposed and dismantled. I didn't cheer. I didn't feel triumph. That wasn't the point. Justice isn't a celebration. It's a ledger, a line drawn in cold ink. Cole stepped in quietly, leaning against the doorframe. All clean, he said. No emotion. Just a flat delivery of fact. I nodded. Good work. He didn't stay. None of them did. That was another lesson I'd learned long ago. Presence is only necessary when it matters. Now it didn't. I looked back at Mason. The swelling had decreased slightly. His eyes fluttered once, then again, like curtains moving in a light breeze. I held my breath. "Hey," I said softly. "It's me. Dad." A small squeeze of his hand. Almost imperceptible, but enough. "I'm here," I continued, voice quiet so as not to startle him. "It's over. You're safe now. We're safe." He blinked. A faint nod. A whisper of recognition. My chest tightened, a mixture of relief and fear. Every breath I'd held for weeks released in tiny fragments. The system was shaken, exposed, but it would rebuild itself. That was inevitable. What couldn't be rebuilt was the assurance that someone could act without permission, without hesitation, without compromise. That was ours now. Outside the hospital, the city had changed. North Ridge high administrators had been replaced. Investigations into police corruption were ongoing. Parents whispered in hallways. Students gawked at headlines. The gang's remnants were left to navigate a world where their power had evaporated. Social media feeds were full of commentary, but none of it mattered. They knew they had been stripped bare, and that knowledge is heavier than any punishment I could impose. I stayed with Mason. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic, coffee, and the faint residue of tears mine, the nurses, everyone who had held their vigil in quiet desperation. "I brought you a book," I said, lifting it from the chair beside me. A story he'd loved as a kid, dog-eared and familiar. "Thought you might want to read it when you can." His fingers twitched toward it. A small, conscious movement, enough to make me smile through a choking surge of emotion. "You remember this one?" I asked softly. His eyes followed the motion. A faint, almost imperceptible nod. The machines beeped steadily. Nurses moved in hushed rhythms, checking IVs, adjusting monitors, noting vitals. All the meticulous routines that mark life, that mark survival. I didn't ask about the city or the arrests. That world was far away now. The only world that mattered was here, in this room, with him. Hours passed. I read aloud passages from the book, voice steady, calm, unshakable. Every word a tether between the outside chaos and the fragile recovery beside me. Mason's eyelids fluttered more often now, sometimes opening, sometimes closing, but always responding. "Dad," he murmured once, barely audible. "I'm right here," I said. He squeezed my hand lightly. Not strong, not fully awake, but enough. Enough to anchor me. I let myself sit there, silent most of the time, just present. Not planning, not seeking vengeance, not plotting, simply existing alongside the child I had fought for. The child who had survived the message meant to destroy him. The sun moved across the sky. Shadows shifted along the walls. A nurse came in to check vitals, smiled faintly at the scene, whispered, "He's making progress." I nodded. "I see it." No words about the city, no commentary about the destruction behind us. Those battles have been fought. Those lessons have been taught. The predators understood that fear could be permanent. The system had learned that not everything could be controlled. I reached over and brushed a damp curl from Mason's forehead. The gesture was simple, human, nothing tactical, nothing calculated. Just father to son. Outside, life continued. Cars moved. People walked. The sun climbed higher. And somewhere beyond the city lights, the pieces we had placed were still affecting change. I didn't feel like a victor. That word fell hollow. There had been no glory, no cheers, only presence, only survival, only the quiet acknowledgement that some things, some powers, exist simply to remind the world that certain lines cannot be crossed with impunity. Mason's hand twitched again, a small breath, then a faint smile as if he remembered something, or perhaps just felt the reassurance of a familiar voice. I stayed, not to win, not to punish, not to teach, simply to be here, to witness and breathe, to witness life continuing despite all the darkness that had tried to consume it. The machines ticked, the monitors hummed, and for the first time in weeks, the room felt like a sanctuary rather than a battlefield. I glanced at the window, at the city beyond, at the streets that had tried to swallow us, at the halls that had echoed with fear and laughter at the wrong time. The system was exposed, reshaped. Power had been challenged. And yet here in this small, sterile room, nothing else mattered. "Hey," I said again, softly, almost a whisper. I'm right here. Mason's fingers tightened slightly on mine, eyes half open, catching the light. A fragile, delicate sign of recovery. And I stood there, not victorious, not triumphant, not justified, just present. The world outside had collapsed, predators had been undone, institutions shaken. But none of that mattered now. Only this. Only him. Power protects itself, the lesson remained. Always. Until it meets something that doesn't need permission. And I didn't.